For 2023's Aero Road Bike of the Year group test, I got my hands on some of the fastest bikes in the world. I assessed 5 different bikes back to back, but took just 3 into the final round of testing before eventually crowning my winner. In this video, we're going to focus on the top 3, and at the end, I'll reveal my winner. But before we go any further, a massive thanks to our sponsors for making Bike of the Year possible. If you'd like details about our partners and how BikeRadar makes its money, we've put links in the video description below. But you can rest assured that BikeRadar's reviews are 100% independent and are not for sale. So let's talk about the bikes. Now first up we have the Trek Madone SLR 7. That's right, the one with the big old hole in its seat tube. The model I tested is spec'd with a Shimano Ultegra Di2 group set, Bontrager carbon wheels and finishing kit, and costs a frankly astronomical £10,200 here in the UK or $9,050 if you live in the US. Second, we have the new Giant Propel Advanced Pro Zero Axis, the mid-tier model in the Propel lineup, which sees the lightweight all-rounder Aero race bike come down to a slightly more realistic price point than the World Tour spec model I've previously tested. Our bike was equipped with a SRAM Force ETAP Axis group set, giant carbon wheels and finishing kit, and cost just under £6,400 or $8,000. The final bike to make my top 3 was the Ribble Ultra SLR. This bike is famous for its hyper-aggressive aero frameset and wild aero handlebar, which uses vortex generating bulges on the tops to help reduce the overall drag of the rider and bike as a system. I tested an upgraded version of the enthusiast build with a Shimano Ultegra Di2 group set, Zip 404 Firecrest wheels and Continental's excellent GP5000 STR tyres. All in, it cost just under £6,600, which at the time of filming is around $8,160. As many of you will have no doubt noticed, it is fair to say that all of the bikes featured in this year's Aero Road Bike of the Year test are at the upper end of the pricing scale. Now all 3 are available in cheaper specs if your budget doesn't quite stretch as far, but it is true to say that these bikes will be out of reach for many people, myself included. If you're looking for a great value road bike, then don't forget that we also dedicate an entire Bike of the Year category just to that topic. So head to BikeRadar.com to find out which bike won that category. Let's talk about testing then. Previously, picking a dedicated aero road bike meant compromising significantly on things such as comfort and practicality. Fortunately though, such issues are largely problems of the past. Today's aero road bikes are fast on the flats and no slouches uphill either. Most now include clearance for wide tyres, and the best don't require a degree in mechanical engineering to work on either. With that in mind, I put the contenders to the test on the twisty, technical and rolling hills of South Bristol. Flats, climbs, descents, windy days, I did it all. And as with all road bikes, I also considered how easy each bike is to live with and whether the stock setup can be adjusted to suit your personal needs and riding style. After all, an aero road bike that's fast in the wind tunnel but can't be adjusted to suit your bike fit is a waste of time. First up, let's talk about the Trek. Now the latest Madone SLR debuted last summer and caused an almighty stir because, as already mentioned, it has a whacking great hole in the seat tube. Now Trek says this hole, which it calls ISOFlow, isn't just good at generating clicks and online chatter though, it's actually there to improve the aerodynamics and comfort of the frame. According to the American brand, ISOFlow accelerates the onrushing airflow through the hole, which in turn reduces the effect of the trailing low pressure weight behind the rider and lowers your drag. Does it work as advertised in real life? Well, honestly, I've not really got an idea, but I can confidently say that the Madone SLR is a very fast race bike with excellent handling, and I don't doubt that it is as slippery as Trek says it is. And while ISOFlow gets a lot of the attention, there are great things going on elsewhere on the bike too. Having the top of the seat tube and seat post cantilevered over the back of the bike, for example, makes for a noticeably comfortable rear end on rough roads, even with the slightly skinny 25C tyres spec'd as stock. I also liked the new flared handlebar, which is 3 cm narrower at the hoods as it is at the drops. With the levers tilted in a touch, it's easy to get down into a narrow and fast position. Of course, fully integrated bars aren't really my cup of tea as they don't allow for any kind of adjustments, but it is possible to swap this one out for a standard stem and handlebar setup if you want a specific size combination that isn't available, or you just prefer a different bar shape. Based on looks alone, you might think that the Madone SLR would be one of the heavier bikes of the three, but at 7.69 kilos for my 56cm test bike, it was actually the lightest by just under 300 grams. Now that's largely thanks to the fact that you are getting the top spec frame set and handlebar here with the fanciest carbon layup that Trek does. In terms of the build kit, it's mostly all good stuff. Everything comes from Bontrager, Trek's in-house brand. You get an Aeroless Elite saddle, Aeroless Pro 51 carbon wheels and R3 hardcase light tyres. I won't talk too much about group sets in this video, but it is safe to say that the latest 12-speed Shimano Ultegra Di2 is brilliant. It offers basically the same performance as Dura Ace, but with a little less shiny finish and for a lot less money. My only problem with the build is that these are all really mid-range parts, and this is a bike that costs more than £10,000. Now everything performs well, but it's hard not to feel a little shortchanged that you aren't getting a saddle with carbon rails, the lightest Aeroless RSL carbon wheels, or the best tyres in Bontrager's range. The tyres in particular are a bit of a sore point for me. Tyres make such a big difference to performance, and in this case, the Bontrager R3 tyres just aren't as supple or as fast as the best road bike tyres currently available, especially when they're set up with the beautiful inner tubes Trek supplies as stock. Now Trek isn't the only brand guilty of doing this, but anything gained by clever holes in the seat tube, narrow handlebars and the rest is likely thrown away by not optimising something as simple as the tyres, and it's maddening. Tyres are of course easy to change, so it isn't the end of the world, but when you're spending this much money on a bike, you just shouldn't need to. That rant out of the way though, the Madone SLR7 is nevertheless a fantastic bike. It's fast, fairly light, handles beautifully and has plenty of racing pedigree at the highest level. Price and tyres aside, it did not disappoint in terms of pure performance. Moving on to the Giant Propel then. I've previously tested the £12,000 World Tour Spec Propel Advanced SL, and while this Advanced Pro version is at 7.79 kilos for this size medium large, just over a kilo heavier, it manages to offer most of the performance of that bike at almost half the price. The Propel Advanced Pro frame set uses Giant's second tier carbon layup and also has a telescoping Aero seat post instead of the integrated post seen on the Advanced SL models. That aside though, the frame shapes are all the same and the remaining differences come in terms of build spec. On that subject, the Propel's build is great for the money. This isn't a cheap bike of course, but there is very little about it that needs upgrading, and you even get a power meter included, something which neither of the other two bikes in the final three have. Just like Ultegra Di2 on the other two bikes, the SRAM Force wireless group set spec here works a treat. Shifts are fast and reliable, the braking is great, and it's generally a top all-round performer. I do think the 10 to 28 tooth cassette is a little bit tight, and given the Propel is more of a lightweight all-rounder aero bike, I think leaning into that with a wider range cassette would have been a smart move, but that is a very minor gripe. The new Giant SLR 50 carbon wheels are also fantastic. They're based on the Cadex 50 Ultra wheels the pros used, but hit a lower price point by using steel bearings and spokes rather than ceramic and carbon ones. Otherwise, they're very similar, with a healthy wide modern rim profile and a competitive weight of around 1500 grams for the set. Likewise, the Cadex Race tubeless tyres are a solid premium model with excellent ride feel and grip. If we're splitting hairs, then independent rolling resistance testing has shown that they're not quite as fast as the best in their class, so if you wanted to go after every last watt, then there are a few to be had here. The geometry of this latest Propel mirrors that of the TCR, and I felt right at home on it from the word go. It's got a great balance of flat road efficiency, a stiff pedalling platform for climbing, and confident but nimble handling. I like the new cockpit and cable routing system too. I think it looks much better than the old one, and I'm thrilled that it doesn't compromise adjustability or compatibility too much. Overall, when it comes to riding fast on the road, whether on the flats, up hills or down, I came away really impressed by how good the Propel is at practically everything. It is undeniably heavier than the top spec model, but I didn't really find that noticeable while riding, and you're just getting so much bike for the money here. Lastly, let's talk about the Ribble Ultra SLR. This bike came with a lot of hype, so I was very excited to finally test it. And thankfully, it didn't disappoint. The Ribble Ultra SLR is one of the fastest bikes that I've ever ridden. Of course, the bike is heavily aero profiled across its entirety, but a big part of that is likely due to how it positioned me on the bike. My test bike came with the longest and narrowest cockpit available, with a 140mm effective stem length and a handlebar that measured just 33cm wide at the hood. Now, this meant that I was able to get very stretched out and narrow, and it made the bike feel so fast. It's fair to say that this setup won't be to everyone's taste, and it can be changed using Ribble's online bike builder tool if you want something different. But I'm a pretty slim guy and I like narrow handlebars, so for me, it felt fantastic. As already discussed, Ultegra Di2 is great, so I won't go over that again, but the Zip 404 Firecrest wheels are worth mentioning. The rims are 58mm deep and have a wide 23mm internal rim width. As a result, the 28C GP5000 STR tyres actually measure over 30mm wide at 60 psi. That's obviously pretty wide for an aero bike, and it made a big difference to how it rides on rough roads. Basically, it just helped take the edge off a frame set that is otherwise very stiff and unforgiving. The Ultra SLR is, as you might have guessed, the heaviest bike of the three here, weighing 8.31 kilos for my size medium test bike. That means there's about 600 grams between this and the Trek Madone, which obviously sounds significant on paper, but if you offered me either bike for a road race or time trial based on these specs, I would definitely pick the Ribble. Of course, if you have the budget for the Trek, it would also be possible to get this Ribble with a lighter, more expensive spec too, as it's very good value for money. So far so good then? Well, in a lot of ways, yes, the Ribble Ultra SLR is an addictive bike to ride on flat or rolling terrain, as it just feels so incredibly fast. The only problem with it per se is that its design is just so incredibly focused. It's like a hill climb or a time trial bike. It's amazing at the specific thing it's designed to do, but perhaps not so great at anything else. Of course, that is an intentional design decision that Ribble made during the development of this bike, and if your goal is getting from A to B as fast as possible on a road bike, then this is one of the best options currently available. But if you want a fast road bike that's comfortable tackling everything from flat, fast days to big jaunts in the mountains, then this just isn't really that. It's perfectly possible to ride it up steep, long climbs, of course, but the big frame tubes and super deep rims make it fairly sensitive to windy conditions. So while it is very fast on descents, it can be a tricky bike to handle when the weather turns. Likewise, while I love the super long and narrow riding position that came from the Ultra handlebar, it won't suit everyone, and this unusual bar is only available in a select few sizes, so there is that to consider as well. So, which is my winner? Well, it's fair to say that all three are excellent bikes, and if you owned any one of them, you're unlikely to be disappointed. For me though, the Giant Propel Advanced Pro just edges it and is my 2023 Aero road bike of the year. While it didn't feel quite as rapid on flat rides as the Ribble Ultra SLR, it's such a strong all-rounder and comes in at a fantastic price for its build spec. The Trek Madone SLR is undoubtedly a brilliant bike, but in my opinion, it falls down on the value front. When you can get an essentially equivalent spec and performance with the Giant or Ribble, spending an extra £3,500 feels very difficult to justify. What did you think though? Did I make the right choice? Which of these bikes would be your pick? As always, let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you want to read the full in-depth reviews of each bike, head to BikeRadar.com to check those out. Otherwise, please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you'd like to watch another video about aero bikes, then why not watch this one?